Welcome. It's time to read chapter 1. Now, if you are somebody who is an author or knows what it takes to be an author, you know that the first chapter needs to be the hook. You need to grab your reader's attention in this first chapter because that will set the tone on whether they will continue reading to the end or if they're going to conveniently put it down. If you watch this video and you're like, nah, and you can't get through it, you probably don't want to buy this book. But I hope that you don't feel that way because, I'm such a captivating reader. It's story time. Okay, first chapter. It is called April's Tips for a Healthy Work-Life Balance. So here we go. Only recently did I realize I had been subconsciously working my whole adult life to find this perfect work-life balance. How could I have a successful career I love, one that would not take me away from all the other things I care about? Relationships with my family and friends, creating fun memories, staying healthy. These are among the many things I need in my life for ultimate fulfillment. In hindsight, I now acknowledge that perfect may have been a bit of a stretch to achieve. Let's just say I'm a recovering perfectionist. That still checks out. And boy, did it cause me a lot of stress trying to reach for that kind of lofty goal. But today, having a healthy balance is what I strive for, and I can say with confidence that I have been successfully working toward it. It's been a bit of a rocky road, and it still is 10 years later. But without those challenging times, I wouldn't have been able to learn from it and improve. Looking back on how far I've come, the payoff from all this hard work is completely worth it. What are the feelings associated with having a healthy work-life balance? You feel at peace, you're happy, and stress levels are low. Conversely, being unbalanced leaves you feeling overwhelmed, like you're moving at a constant speed of 1,000,000 miles per hour, unfulfilled, and with a level of dissatisfaction. Which sounds more desirable to you? In this chapter, I'm going to share with you some tips I've learned in my training and along my own journey that have allowed me to find success and balance, to feel more peaceful, reduce stress, and have the happiness I've always desired. In other words, I explain why I now can say, with beaming energy and consistency, that life is amazingly good. I'm going to stop here really quick because, what's interesting as you set on this path to be balanced, feel this success, I think that as you continue to improve, the bar raises. I think with any sort of accomplishment or any sort of goal, it's like you hit something and you hit something consistently, then it's like, let me one up myself. And I think that that has been the biggest challenge of balance, is because it is so, I was almost going to say volatile, but it's such a teeter-totter, like balance is, where, things can get good and then something can happen and kind of knock you down a couple rungs, and then you build back up again. And it really sometimes feels like you're walking on a tightrope, which maybe that sounds a little bit stressful to people. But when I think about this quote where I say life is amazingly good, one of the things that comes up for me right now is can I say life is amazingly good? And sometimes when I take a step back and look at it, life is really good. I am super happy with where I am at my life. Is everything packaged in a nice little bow? Absolutely not. But the types of problems that I encounter are so high level, and there are so many worse things in the world that I have to be so grateful every day. And I think that there's that aspect of, negativity just outweighs positivity so much. And so sometimes I don't feel like life is amazingly good, but I almost have to take a step back and realize no, it's good, because I've been working at this over 10 years now. Okay, so tip number 1, know that balance is not black and white, it's gray. This is a big, important one. I recently had a conversation with a friend I hadn't been in contact with for a long while. He asked me how I was doing, to which I replied the usual, "Great, so busy, so crazy." And I rattled off the many things I was doing. I was still in my previous job the last time we'd connected, so I shared the progress of my new business venture. I also told him about writing a book about work-life balance, to which he responded, "Seems like that contradicts your real life." I kindly disagreed and emphasized that my life is exactly how I want it to be. It's really important to understand that the definition of balance means different things to different people. Some people, like me, love to say super busy. Others may think that is absolutely crazy and want to have as much free time on their calendars as possible. Some people actually like working longer hours while others are out the door at 5 p.m. and don't even think about work until the next morning. Some people love working out daily while others are fine with one day or two. Some want marriage and a big family, and some are completely happy being single. Whatever it may be, everyone has different priorities and desires. So to say that balance has a one-size-fits-all model is unrealistic. It's not always about having a little bit of everything and spending equal time on each area. It's about having the right amount of time for all the things you want in your life, and only you can determine what that is. That said, drop all judgment and acknowledge that your own definition of balance will differ from others. What you consider a balanced life may not match anyone else's definition, and that is completely okay. It's more about achieving the feeling of balance than what you actually do to get you there. Don't let others define it for you. If it's quirky, but it feels good to you, then roll with it. So I did know that people were having this struggle with the word balance, but it is interesting to hear, like even some of my closest friends who know that I like to talk about balance, they're like, no, I would prefer harmony, or balance doesn't exist. Like these people say this to me and I'm like, you are basically poo-pooing my work. No, I'm kidding. But it's so hard because I think words carry so much weight and balance is just not a word for everyone. I think I even fought it because of the fact that I knew so many other people didn't like the word, that I didn't want to claim it for myself, even though this is like the thing that I'm chasing. And I think I was just in denial for so many years that, well, if nobody else likes balance, then I shouldn't take that on because people will have a misconception of me thinking like I have everything equal or whatever the negative connotation is with the word balance. But it's not even that. Like I define a lot of words by feeling, and balance is one of those words. When I don't feel overwhelmed and I feel like things are moving well enough, like that's balance. Or if I am following my goals with intention, that's balance. If I'm doing things because I want to do them and not because somebody else told me to or says that it should be this way, that's balance for me. And it's interesting because this year I want to get something representing balance tattooed on my body, but I'm resisting this idea of like actually tattooing the word because I'm afraid of what people might think when it comes to that. And now I'm like, but every tattoo I have on my body is words. So what am I doing? I'm sitting here caring and worrying about what other people are going to think. I have to think about that one because that was just a revelation that literally came up as I was reading this. Maybe I just say, screw it. I'm going to tattoo the word balance on my body because I can't do it any other way. We'll see. To be continued. Okay, tip number 2. Self-awareness is the gateway to change. Increasing self-awareness is probably the most important thing you can do to kickstart yourself toward achieving a healthier work-life balance. Being mindful of how you respond to any stimulus is absolutely essential in order to make any meaningful changes in your life. If you're not paying attention, how can you decide to do anything different? In any given situation, think about your physical, mental, and emotional states and how they're affected. For example, ask yourself the following types of questions. After a long workout, what physical pain do you feel in your muscles? How does sleeping only a few hours a night affect your ability to focus? What social situations do you thrive in, and which types of people do you like interacting with? How does the change in seasons affect your mood? What is the purpose of a task you're trying to complete? What types of scenarios really push your buttons and stress you out? These are some sample questions that you can ask of yourself to become more self-aware. Once you know the answers to those questions, you can start to understand how and if those reactions serve you, and then decide whether or not it's time to make a change. Sometimes it takes repeated reactions to the same situation before you even realize something needs to change, or maybe that you need more of the same. If you find yourself doing the same behavior over and over again, take note. If it's something that gives you great joy, what is preventing you from having more of it? If it's making you miserable, what will it take for you to change course? One caution is that self-awareness is not the habit of forming a judgment about your responses. Observations and judgments are two separate things. Observations are more informational and factual, while judgments are a filtered interpretation of an observation that may or may not actually be true, and they may skew your ability to make educated decisions. For instance, observation: I don't enjoy socializing in big group settings. Judgment: I have no friends because no one talks to me at parties. Example 2. Observation: I like to leave work at 5 p.m. and not think about work again until the next morning. Judgment: I will probably never be successful because I don't bring work home. Know the difference between the two and focus on staying as objective as possible as you are becoming more aware of yourself. So, how do you get started increasing your awareness and achieving that healthy work-life balance? Actually, you've already started by deciding to read this book, so congratulations! My advice is to continue reading, and as I share my story and journey, be mindful about the thoughts that come up about your own life. Have you experienced something similar? What did you do in those moments? What results did your actions yield? If you haven't experienced it, how might you have responded? Keep searching for your own answers and you'll be well on your way. So tip number 2 is super important because it really is all about practicing curiosity and asking questions. You have to have some sort of feedback loop. You can also take external feedback, but there's nothing more powerful than the feedback that you give yourself. And then you have to distinguish between, is it self-talk or like self-judgment, or is it actually observation? That's where we get tripped up a lot in the self-awareness game. We want to remove that judgment so that we can make sound decisions based off of that and not just our own fears and limiting beliefs and all that fun stuff. All right, tip number 3, identify the values that drive your happiness. I can't tell you how much everything starts with values in my life and everything I teach. So I don't know, people who I've worked with are probably like, because I drill into this over and over and over again. Okay, one of the things you may notice while reading this book is the number of times I say the word fun. It's among my top values and is so important to me that I have devoted an entire chapter to it. Accomplishment, communication, and respect are also important values. I love setting goals and meeting them. My relationships are optimal when open communication exists, and I place high priority on treating others as I would like to be treated. Once I took the time to understand the values that drive my happiness, I was able to make better decisions by aligning my actions with those values. Also, by understanding that my values may differ from others, helped shift my perspective and release a lot of stress. When I would experience conflict or rejection in an interaction, I used to take offense and sometimes harbor frustration toward that individual, not quite understanding their actions or opinions. Now, rather than being angry, I consider what is important to the other person and how it might differ from what is important to me. I'm now more accepting of disagreement and sometimes even welcome and embrace it. I still don't like it though. When you know your values, it's much easier to understand what is driving you to react a certain way in any given situation. When you're feeling happy, the values important to you are being honored. When you're faced with stress, one or more of your values is being challenged. Or it might mean that 2 or more of your values are in conflict with each other. Have you identified your values? If not, a quick exercise could be to jot down a couple scenarios. First, think of a time that made you happy. What was it about that particular event that brought you joy? Then think of a time that caused you frustration. What specifically caused conflict in that moment? Your responses will give you some insight as to what values are important to you. And if you still feel like you need more guidance, get in touch with me. I would love to help you explore this further. So 10 years later, one of the values that's popping up, and I wouldn't call this a core value at this moment, but it's like really grinding my gears right now, is efficiency. I want to commit to so many things that efficiency is a non-negotiable. And when things aren't efficient, I get so frustrated. Some of it I create for myself and some of it is external, but if I can't fix it, it drives me nuts. So yeah, efficiency is definitely a value of mine. Is it one of my top values? I think that efficiency shows up in all of my other core values, which are fun, accomplishment, connection, authenticity, and now balance. But it's not the core value. But that's an example of knowing something that really bothers me, and that is a value that's not being honored. Efficiency is not being honored. I like efficient folks. Tip number 4, know how to prioritize and plan. Each week, we have 7 days, 168 hours to get stuff done. How does the overcommitted individual seeking a better work-life balance make the most of that time? With a plan, of course. In order to streamline and maximize one's efficiency in life, a person constantly needs to identify the high priority items on his or her to-do list, and then implement a timeline and plan to execute those items. Some tasks may only require a few minutes, while others may involve days, months, or maybe even years of tasks and subtasks before they are complete. While it is each individual's prerogative for exactly how long and how detailed to make their plan, highly productive individuals have a system, such as a calendar or an advanced, highly detailed to-do list, they use to track their progress toward their goals to ensure they are completed appropriately. Why is it so important to prioritize? For overcommitted individuals, the to-do list never ends. If you spend most of your time executing tasks that are not important, you may be getting some things done, but you will likely lack the feeling of fulfillment. While we all have tasks to do on a regular basis in order to live, laundry, cleaning the house, shopping for groceries, paying bills, etc., we must also balance them with tasks that align with our values and sense of purpose. And when we do this, we feel more excited and invigorated about life. Quite often, there appears to be the lack of time to complete multiple important tasks. In some cases, perhaps it will be necessary to place more focus on the highest priorities. But in other cases, there may be pockets of opportunity where time can be repurposed toward another task, as long as the main priorities can still be addressed. One way to assess the situation is to look at your schedule and locate those gaps of opportunity. Are there similar tasks you can cluster together and resolve more efficiently? There's that word, efficiently. For example, if you need to make a handful of phone calls, can you schedule those calls in a consolidated window of time? Or could you run outside errands in an order that minimizes your driving time? Ask yourself if there are areas of your life which you spend excess time that you could sacrifice to achieve another goal. For example, if you want to find more time to work out, are you willing to stop staying at work late so that you can spend some time at the gym? One of my clients was interested in pursuing a new project in alignment with his passions, but felt he didn't have the time to execute it. We evaluated where he was directing his energy and how much time he spent in these areas. Once he was able to see the true amount of time he was devoting to personal care, work, family, and all of his other commitments, he was able to see that he, indeed, had gaps of time opportunity. It then became a decision of whether or not he really wanted to repurpose some of that time toward his pet project. I'm going to pause really quick because this is so interesting reading back all of these words and knowing that some of these examples that I'm sharing are linked to an actual person whose name I do not speak of, but 10 years later, I'm like, who was that again? And my brain is like racking, trying to remember, like, who was I writing about? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. I'm getting old. All right. Are you spending a lot of time complaining about how much work you have to do and how much is on your plate? If the answer is yes, are you really aware of how much time you spend complaining? Could this time be repurposed into actually getting your work done? I laugh at these questions because this was my biggest time waster and productivity killer, and it still is. I'm not saying to never vent or complain at all because sometimes it helps to unload the stress you have, but be aware of how long you spend in that space. Is it worth that time that you could be otherwise getting other things done? Just some food for thought. One last thought on planning and prioritizing. I suspect some of you may be struggling with having to commit to any plan. Maybe you want to have that wiggle room to deal with opportunities that come up at the last minute. Maybe you don't want to commit to something that could potentially be derailed. You know what? That's perfectly fine. If that's important to you, go with it. But just know that you're planning to not have a plan. And while that's all fine and dandy, how does it rank on your priority list? Tip number 5, embrace flexibility. This is another thing that I talk about so much, especially as somebody who is seen as like a planner. Like, this is one of the things that I think in the last 10 years I have been able to embrace. Thank you to improv. But let me read what this says and then maybe I'll have something to share. After all that talk about planning, it's just as important to acknowledge that change is inevitable. You can be the type of person who can plan things down to the minute. Ask anyone who went to my wedding about the 13-page spreadsheet I created. Oh my gosh. Outlining the responsibilities of every single person in my wedding party. It was a 50-person wedding party, by the way, y'all. From 6 a.m. to midnight that day. And perhaps everything will go great without a hitch. However, it can just as likely result in completely unexpected outcomes. For those who are super planners like me, it is essential to know how to be flexible because when plans go awry, you may experience a lot of unnecessary stress. I've learned this lesson the hard way multiple times. For instance, I had once orchestrated a vacation where I arranged in advance separate plans with 11 different people over 4.5 days, And when a couple of the meetings didn't execute as I had anticipated, putting forth all that effort prior to the trip and not being able to see those plans come to fruition was frustrating. Furthermore, I spent a lot of time during the vacation trying to make adjustments, and I wasted a lot of time that I could have otherwise been having fun. After that trip, I vowed to wing it a little more, and while I may still have some plans while on vacation, the only thing I really commit to now is making sure I have fun, and that seems to work wonderfully. Okay, so this has become like my thing to do. Like, I am really almost bad 10 years later making plans. Like, I'll tell people and then I'm like, if you don't reciprocate the communication about us meeting, I am not going to chase you down. I used to chase people down so much, and I don't know if it's just 10 years of getting tired of hanging on people or what. While we're on the topic of vacations, which by the way sound really fun right now, there's so many examples where lack of flexibility causes stress. How much do you love those delayed flights? Or better yet, how about those flights that get canceled as you're already strapped into your seat and ready to go? That's a true story. What if you had a 3-week cruise setting sail the following morning? Imagine how stress and anger would serve you in those moments. Trust me, they don't. And while stress is not ever 100% avoidable, how you manage that stress quickly and get through it is key. So after you throw your internal mini tantrum and get over the initial shock of your world being suddenly turned upside down, start looking at your options. In this case, are there other flights that will get you there in time? Can you drive? Is there a train you can take? Is it worth canceling the trip or rescheduling? Should you start looking at alternative ways to get to the next port of call? Where is your luggage and how will you ensure it gets where it needs to be? There are opportunities to resolve this issue, but as I mentioned earlier, the longer you linger in your anger, the less efficient you will be in getting anything done. So in a nutshell, plans are always subject to change, so be flexible. If your master plan hits a roadblock, don't waste your time stewing in your own anger. Quit complaining and take action toward a solution. You'll be much more productive that way. Say, bring it on, change. I will conquer you. You'll likely manage to figure out a way to get things back on track and make things work, and then have an amazing and potentially funny story to tell. Love it. And so, quick side note on flexibility. I think I took improv classes in 2018. I don't know if it was 2017, 2018, or 2018, 2019, but that was like the perfect way to learn how to be more flexible. I think that it almost made it too easy for me to procrastinate. But what's good is that I can get things done even more efficiently because I don't care as much about the perfection of it all. So thank you, improv. Tip number 6 of 10, be open-minded about trying new things. If you have a FOMO or fear of missing out attitude, this might come easy to you. And that's great because you don't have many adjustments to make to execute this tip. It's easy to give anything a shot because really, what do you have to lose? If you try it and you like it, you can do it again. If you realize after the fact that it's not your thing, at least you have a good story to add to the memory bank. For those anti-FOMO folks who struggle with wanting to try new things, I have a question for you. What's stopping you from doing something new or differently? Okay, I understand if it's just something that doesn't seem exciting or interesting to you, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm asking is this: if you want to make a legitimate change in your life towards something that would make you happier and more fulfilled, what is stopping you from trying something new that might lead you one step closer to what you really want? One of the biggest roadblocks people may encounter is their fear of change. Having to adapt to any sort of scenario different from the norm can bring up a number of mixed feelings, mostly in the form of stress. Considering the pain that the thought of change can bring, it's completely understandable why people may not want to step outside their own boxes. Many find comfort in maintaining status quo, and in some cases, this is fine. However, when your heart desires more, living with the same patterns isn't going to address those aspirations. You must either choose to set aside those dreams or finally face that fear and take steps to change. People might believe they have limitations that prevent them from achieving what they want. Not enough time, not enough money. Why should that stop you from even trying? What are some tactics you can explore to get that money, time, or whatever else it is that limits you? For instance, if money is an issue, perhaps you can consider requesting financial support, especially if your investment will bear a greater return in the long run. If time is what you are lacking, look for those gaps of opportunity and just make this change a priority. Look for the opportunities, don't just jump to conclusions. Others just flat out don't like to fail. Understandable, but failure is what allows you to grow. How can you know what you like if you don't know enough about what you don't like? Don't immediately consider failure a bad thing. Sometimes people have to fail in order to open their eyes to the opportunities that come afterward. And this is me, totally me. And if you have tried multiple strategies that have failed, don't lose faith in the success of other strategies. Just because the track record isn't ideal doesn't mean you won't ever find success. Finally, some are concerned about how others may judge their actions. Keep in mind that these other people are not you. Whether or not they approve of your life decisions is irrelevant. Only you know what's best for you. If they truly care about you, they will support you no matter what. With all that said, I will admit I have been guilty of all the above at certain times. I've had a lot of fear. I've made assumptions. I've cared way too much about what other people thought. Once I realized I could let all of that go, the sky was the limit. I do trip up occasionally and revert to my old ways, but I stay aware and immediately switch out of the negative, self-defeating mode of thought when I catch myself. And I haven't been happier. Note, I never thought I would write a book, and here you are, reading my book. Just saying. Tip number 7, know your boundaries. Of all my tips, this is probably the most impactful yet hardest one for overcommitted people to execute. Recognizing my own boundaries was one of the toughest lessons I needed to learn, and perhaps others in the overcommitment camp can relate. In some cases, I choose to take on all challenges that arise without seeking help from others because I don't want to burden anyone else with my issues. Everyone is busy and dealing with their own to-do list. Other times, knowing how overwhelming life can be, I want to help people who seem to be drowning in their tasks, and because I care about them, I take it upon myself to help them toward a less stressful state. Unfortunately, that can also leave me with a lot of responsibility on my plate, less time, and more stress. There are 2 things to realize about setting boundaries. First, you must draw the line and say no to outside requests from time to time. You're not Superman or Superwoman, and you can't do it all. You may wish you could, but you can't. Actually, wait. Think about how much pressure comes with being a superhero. People depend on you to save them. But if you spend all your time saving others, who will come to your rescue when you need it? Perhaps you need to learn how to be just a little bit selfish about what you need, especially if no one else is going to give you those things. You need to allocate energy toward doing those things for yourself. If you're a giving person, I know this is easier said than done. I struggle with this often, and I continually ask myself what it truly means when I say no to others in order to make time to take care of myself. Does it mean I'm self-centered? Absolutely not. It just means I'm treating myself as I would any family member or close friend, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So here's the thought. Remember when we talked about values? When someone asks something of you and it doesn't align with your values, that request is something you should say no to. I encourage you to try it. The second thing to know about boundaries is there are people out there who can and want to help you. Utilize your support system. This can be your friends, family, or anyone you come in contact with on a regular basis. And if you have the means, paid services exist to assist with the many things you have on your plate. If you're a parent, getting help with your children, whether paid or free, is a great way to free up some time for yourself, to do other chores, or to relax and have a night out, or maybe even to sleep in. Imagine how that would affect the quality of the time you spend with your children when you are with them. Maybe you're a professional who works long hours or travels for work frequently. You might not want to spend your entire weekend going to the grocery store, but still want the fridge full of options when you are home. Perhaps you consider a grocery or food delivery service to save you that trip to the store. There are services out there that are meant to save you the time you don't have. Take advantage of them. It's time to exercise the power of no in order to start saying yes to you. Outsource the things that drain you so that you can make the time for the things you really want to do. It's not the easiest task, but I promise when you finally take the leap, it's an amazing feeling. All right, tip number 8, get really good at multitasking. I'm realizing that multitasking is another one of those trigger words for people. So let me read this tip and see how I feel about it. This is a tip where some of my work-life balance expertise shines through, as I am the queen of multitasking. Let me first start this tip by saying that I'm not encouraging anything dangerous like texting and driving, and I'm not saying that you should multitask anything that requires serious focus. As I mentioned earlier, think about the wheel of life and how you can multitask in the different areas it covers. As a refresher, career, family, money, personal development, spirituality, relationships, health and wellness, and fun. And for example, How can you have fun and fulfillment in your career? How can you foster good relationships while at the same time addressing your health and wellness? How can your own personal development bring you more money? I'm going to pause here for a second because this is interesting. So at this time, I hadn't created my version of Wheel of Life. So this wheel, one of the things that was part of the wheel that I adopted from my coaching program was spirituality. And I got rid of that and changed it into intimate relationships and social relationships. So very interesting. I lump spirituality into personal development to some extent because it is, your belief system and, how you do things. So as you continue this book, I'll show you how I found a way to make working out fun and gain so many friendships while doing it. I have a career that aligns with my passions and allows me to spend more time with my family and friends and take a ton more vacations. Pause. I can totally do without taking tons of vacations. Not that I don't want to, I think it's the flying aspect. Like in my old lady age, traveling a lot is not fun for me anymore. I've worked hard on my personal development, and as a result, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I found a way to create more wealth, even in the absence of a 9-to-5 job. When you can align your actions to enhance multiple areas of your life simultaneously, you can also save precious time. And as you know, there's never enough time in the world of the overcommitted. The more aware you are of how the tasks you execute strengthen your connection to your values, the closer you are to mastering your work-life balance. Oh God, tip number 9. Slow down, as I feel like I'm talking fast so that I can go to my son's concert. Sometimes it's easy to forget to breathe when you have so many things going on, but we need to breathe in order to live. Whether you start to feel unhealthy tension in your muscles, get up and walk around. Take a few deep breaths. If meditation is your thing, do it. It's not my thing. If working out helps you blow off some steam, do that. Perhaps go for a run. If you like to belt out tunes, go for a drive or hop in the shower and sing your heart out. That's what I do. Whatever it is you need to do to release the tension, go for it, because that tension is indicating you're probably moving too fast. Overcommitted people work at a fast pace, and understandably so, considering there's never enough time in the day to get every single thing done. But just remember that life is short, and on occasion, you need to stop and appreciate all the gifts you've been given. If you don't, what's the point? I once had a chat with a client whose intuition led her to feel that I was overwhelmed due to the rushed energy I brought to our conversation. I was absolutely not aware this was happening, but as soon as she pointed that out, I felt sick to my stomach because it was true. I was trying to get some other work done while scarfing down my breakfast at the same time, moments before we got on the call. I hadn't made any space to take a breather beforehand. I can't imagine how effective I could have been trying to help someone who felt overcommitted find the room to breathe when I wasn't walking the talk. Oof, ouch. From that point on, I decided it was time to slow down. As a result, I'm feeling a lot more peaceful while still getting the same amount, if not more, done. So I'm going to pause here because this is probably one of the hardest tips for me. And I have to almost schedule in slow down time just so that I can do it, because I can't, I sometimes feel I'm incapable of slowing down. It's like once I'm on a train, I'm like chugga, 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 just going. And I know that I almost need to schedule in the breaks. Sometimes I will just work and then forget that I was supposed to eat lunch. So this is still something that I struggle with to this day. If you're a planner, I would suggest plugging enough buffer time into your schedule that you're not rushing from one thing to another without time to breathe. For example, I literally type transport into my calendar wherever I'm driving to or from appointments. It prevents me from trying to overload my schedule and helps me find a way to say no without guilt. Most importantly, it brings me one step closer to my ideal work-life balance. And I'm so grateful that there's technology that will just put that travel buffer in without me having to manually do it, because I cannot tell you how much time that used to take. Final tip, tip number 10, make a commitment to balance and don't give up. Committing to something new can be difficult for people who already feel overcommitted, but if you're interested in conquering the work-life balance challenge, it's necessary because it takes persistence and hard work to get there. Changing how you live your life into one that's less overwhelming and more fulfilling doesn't happen overnight. You're not always going to find the right solutions to your problems the first time, or the second time, or maybe even the third time. There's a lot of trial and error involved in making good progress, but with the proper perseverance, you will get there. Sometimes your life will just be hectic and you need to prepare extra hard for those occasions. And I will pause here because that is something that I absolutely know. I know that May and October are my hardest months, and that's where I have to prepare to make no plans whatsoever because my life will make those plans for me. But if you start thinking ahead and know you'll need some rest after a stressful time, block the time you need to recuperate. Take a moment to imagine a goal you've set and accomplished. Think about the small victories you celebrated as you worked toward achieving it. Think about all the things that didn't work along the way that may have caused frustration. Think about the feeling you had when you finally achieved the goal. What did that accomplishment inspire you to do next? Now think about work-life balance. How much do you want it? What are you willing to do to get there? How do you think you'll feel as you make progress? What might it inspire you to do next once you get to where you want to be? So there are my tips to have the great balance in life you've always wanted. You probably noticed that some of the tips may appear to cancel each other out. Be a good planner, but be flexible. Try new things, but set boundaries. Multitask, but slow down. If you know what the extremes are and can avoid them, you're much more likely to seek the middle ground. And that middle ground, my friend, is the sweet spot. I'll see you when you get there. The end of chapter 1. Reflections on reading it. I think that it's interesting because I don't remember writing a lot of it, but it's like, yes, this is my jam. I teach it in an evolved way nowadays, and it's still the same things. Like I still talk about values, I still talk about self-awareness. The multitasking aspect is, I think I try to tell people like, because I can't multitask, right? I do multitask and I hate doing it. But that's like trying to like respond to a text while I'm working on an article and also trying to deal with my kids, whatever. Like that is not the multitasking that intended, but I did used to multitask a lot. So now it's like I need to focus on one thing. Distraction in the last 10 years, I think, has escalated so much more. And at the time I wrote this book, my kids hadn't been diagnosed with ADHD yet, so ADHD was not something that I even knew about to some extent, and how that impacts. And so I think now, 10 years later, I look at this more as a lot of people who have ADHD can struggle with some of these things, and that's why that structure is like so crucial. Because they still have these same feelings of being overwhelmed and just having a lot of stuff to do and not being motivated enough and structure and having the plan. And that is even more crucial for people who have ADHD. So that's like something that I've learned as I have progressed through my business. I try to make my strategies very ADHD, neurodivergent friendly because a lot of the same feelings come up and some of those structures need to be put in place for people to succeed. And I want to create that safe container to feel like they're making the right progress. So that's my review of chapter 1. I am going to take this and think about which of these 10 tips I haven't been practicing and that I need to revisit. I think I do pretty well on most of them, but the slowdown thing is a thing. Slowing down and knowing boundaries. The multitasking aspect of all of this, thinking about how you can create goals that attend to both areas of life or multiple areas of life. It's like I always try to look at how my social relationships are fun, or how can I have more fun with my family, or how can I make my career more fun? What other things can I do outside of career that can create wealth for me? Like those are the ways that I look at multitasking. And that was what I meant by that chapter or by that tip. But I want to make sure that I'm always remembering, like I'm doing this, and does this also serve purpose in some of my other areas of life? And slowing down is always the one. Maybe tip 7, know your boundaries. Tip 9, slow down. Those are my big issues 10 years later that I need to remind myself. So that is the end, and I will see you in chapter 2. See you later.